Hello and welcome again. Okay, so in this lesson, we'll be cleaning up our code. We'll be using environment variables in place of some of the values we have. And just to refresh, we're using environment variables so that we do not have to hard code some values like our database connection string, our ports, and some other values like that. So we're going to be using environment variables so that we don't have to explicitly write out what our connection string would be. We just need to have a variable name here, and that can be replicated in different environments, like your local environment and your production environment. So that's why we're going to be using that. So let's start with environment variables. Um, I'm going to start by installing um, a package called .env. Let me stop my server for now and just install .env. And what this package does is to use your environment variables and configure your app to use the environment variables. So while this is running, I'm going to head back to VS Code and create a new file called the env file, rather .env. Okay, so this is a file that will contain our environment variables, and the .env package, this one we just installed, is designed to check this file for those variables and then add them to an object called process.env, and we can now fetch our variables from there at any time. So let's start by adding our environment variables. The first one I will add will be the ports. So you just add them by saying port equals 4000. Let's have for the connection string, let's just say db URL equals MongoDB localhost port 27017, and I guess we're on, yes, the book app database slash book app. And we notice I'm not having to use the quotes, so you do not need to use that for the .env file. It will automatically interpret them as strings. All right, so the next one, I want to have one for the JWT secrets, and let's just call that a very big secrets. Okay, so I have the number 3 here instead of E. And lastly, let's add the token expiry. Um, this time, let's use a bigger number, 48,000 seconds. So with all of this configured, what it means is that I can now take off this variable from here, from being 4000, and just leave it as an open variable that can be changed without touching the code exactly. So to use the .env package now, I would go to my index.js file, and right here on line 3, I'm going to say require .env dot config, and that is all I need to do. Now, from this line, let's console.log um, process.env, which I mentioned the other time. Let me save this and start up my server afresh. And let's see what is going to be on the console. Now you can see this very long um, object with key value pairs. and you can see a lot of things right here actually, but let's look for the ones we just added in the env file. You can see db url here. You can see the jwt secrets right here. You can see what else, the port right here. You can see the string 4000, and also the token expiry. You can also see it right here as a string. So that's pretty much what we need to do to configure it. Now we need to use it. So here, instead of const port equals 4000, I'll just say const port equals process.env.port. And just for sake of unforeseen issues, I can just say if it does not find that port, it can use 4000. So it will first try to locate this value, and if not, it will use the 4000 value. Okay, um, we have that correctly. If I save now, you can see that um, app is listening on port 4000, and even if I take off the 4000, you would see that our app is still running correctly. So um, let's just leave it like this. Process.env.port. Now let's try to update the database setup. So const connection string now is going to be process.env.bburl. I'm using the same values I have here, capital letters, dburl, just as I have here actually. And then I can save this and save this, and my database will still be connected. Yes, still connected. And I can head over to my middleware's authentication and change this to process.env.jwt secrets, and I'll copy this and paste this also in the auth controller, and that will be here, and this will be process.env.token expiry, and this needs to be a number, so I'll just coerce this to be a number. And so if I save all, yes, so my app should still be working. Yes, it still works correctly. Now the next thing I want us to do is to take off some of these functions like the JWT signing and verifying, and let's extract them to a separate file where we can now call that function anytime we need it. So let's create a new folder called services, new folder services, and here let's have a single file called jwt service.js. So anything that has to do with the jwt module, we can create functions for it here and export those functions and then use them wherever we need them to be used. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to create two functions, one for creating a token and one for decoding the token. So let's pick this from here. I'm going to copy this here, and then I'll say exports dot create token will be a function that takes in the user object, and what we want it to do is return Let's use this syntax: try and catch. So I'm not sure if you have seen this syntax, or if you haven't, what it does is that it would evaluate this block of code right here and attempt to proceed to a result. Now, if any error happens, it will run the block of code that I have here. So then I do not need to use callbacks, error callbacks for this code. So I just need to say return JWT, or let's just say let's token be equal to JWT dot sign, and we want it to sign ID is user dot ID plus underscore ID. Um, Username is user dot username. First name is user dot first name, just as we have here, and then the last name. Okay, I think we do not have the ID, but let's leave the ID right there. And then last name is user dot last name, and then we want it to use the secrets, and also expires in. We want it to use the token expiry, and that is all. I do not need to add a callback function with error and token here. So if there's an error, we can now return null here and just log the error to the console. Otherwise, we want to just return the token. All right, so let's try to use this function in the auth controller, especially in our register endpoints. So I'm going to take all of this off and just say const. Let me navigate to this first. Require um, services slash JWT service. And I want to use the create token function. Okay, so right here where we are assigning the JWT, I just want to take all of this off, all of this totally, and just say let token equal to create token user. Oh, right. And so now the user um, parameter would now be the new user, which we just created here. And once that is done, what we want to do is, if there is no token, that means an error has occurred. Let's return rest.status for 500 JSON, and let's just say sorry, we could not authenticate you. This login, just something like this, right? Okay, now let's try to register a new user. Let's check the console for any errors. No errors so far. Now let's try to register a new user. Let's just pick some, let's call this username MongoDB, password Express, and let's send this. Okay, now there's an error, and let's check what the error is. It says token expiry is not defined. Okay, so that should be in the service here. All right, so expires in here should be the expiry variable, and that should solve it. Let's save and try again. Postman send. Okay, let's try MongoDB Atlas as the username, and now it works correctly. All right, so our function does that for us correctly. Now, um, let's try to replicate that in the login function. So now we can also take off all of this completely, and let me just copy it the way I have here and paste here, and let's try to log in now. Log in, and let's take off the first name and last name. Let's send this. Okay, my server is not up yet. New user is not defined. Oh, my bad. This right here should be okay. Let's take this off. And if there's no token, okay, so what we want to do is for found user, not new user, found user, which is what we have here. And if there's no token, we want to return this, and I can take this off. And then should be able to go with this. Okay, now let's send this request again. And the login works correctly. All right. So that should solve that. Now let's also go to the authentication middleware and try to clean it up a bit also. Let's pick everything that has to do with JWT here and also replicate that in this service here. So let's say exports dot decode token is a function that will take in a token, and all it will do will be, let's use the same try and catch, and if there's an error, let's just return null so that we can quickly pick that before sending the response. Console.log error. If there's an error, what we want it to do is let's recorded token equal to jwt dot verify token, and with the secrets, and we just want to say return coded token. And so let's try this here, and let's require this function const decode token. So what I have here, code token, yes, the code token equals require services slash the JWT service. Okay. Yes, okay. So what I need to do here is just say this will no longer be a callback. This will just be let's coded token equal to code token, and that will take in token. And I can save this. Let's try to use unauthenticated routes. Let's try to get slash books. Let's see. Okay, so we need an authorization header. Let's log in again. And let's copy this token. And now let's send the get request again. So I can send it in the headers here as we've always been doing. I can also use this authorization pane here, and you can select type is bearer token, and here you can just paste a token and it will send uh, this as the headers. If you come here now, you can see um, authorization and bearer with the token I just sent right here. So I can send this now and it works correctly, right? I have switched from my other OS to Windows, so that's why this is empty. So I can still go to the post request and try this. And since I'm not an admin user, it restricts me. All right, so that works as expected. All right, so now let's, I think that should be all we need to clean up. Um, you could also take off some of the um, callbacks if we use asynchronous functions. So if you know how to use asynchronous functions, you can go ahead to do that. But for now, I would not be doing that so that I do not cause any sort of confusion with those who are not familiar with it. So this would wrap up all we need to do on authentication on our book app, and I'll see you in another lesson.